are growing. And take action when we find things that shouldn't be growing. We take our time when you need to talk. And work fast when every second counts. We put a lot of heart into everything we do because we want to keep yours healthy. And when your heart is breaking, we help you find ways to connect with those that seem lost. We'll be with you in any situation and help see you through it. We are Ontario's doctors, and you have always been at the center of our care. And we will always be leading you to better health.
Are you playing slots?
Yeah, on OLG's new online casino.
Wow.
Yeah, now I can play.
All right.
On the clock.
I'm live whether I want to be or not. I'm not sure why I'm live, but here I am. Here I am. There's the Twitch. I don't know what happened. Technology, it's so fun. Okay, start streaming. All right. turn down that music. All right. I think some of you could hear the music, some not. So I turned off the music, and welcome. I guess some of you, I hit a button and some of you saw me setting up, so how cool is that? Seeing the behind the scenes of what goes into setting up a stream. It is exciting, and I'm so excited to be here. For those who don't know me, my name is Sèphera Girón, and I'm a Twitch streamer, but hopefully this is going out to Facebook and YouTube as well. I have no idea. Anyways, it's all a big technological experience on the Aquarius new moon. We're in an Aquarius new moon, and it's the year of the metal ox, and I'm a metal ox and an Aquarius, so I figured this is the perfect day for me to do my very first horror reading online on Twitch. Now, for those who don't know, I've been a published horror writer for about 20 years. In fact, it's been exactly 20 years since my very first mass market paperback was published. Now, I have had other books published before this, but this was my first mass market, see it at the airport book, right? Now, before I begin to do a reading, I just want to go through some things to explain how this hour is set up. So first of all, this is part of the National Reading Program put on by the Writers' Union of Canada and sponsored by the Canada Council of the Arts. So a lot of Canadian stuff behind me tonight, and I'm super grateful for the opportunity. So I did my best to horror it up. Now, on a more technical note, literally technical, because we're in the age of Aquarius, it's all about technology and air, and we're in a Mercury retrograde, so we know things are going to screw up, just like you saw me setting up. So what might happen is I may lose internet at some point, and so if that happens, I will try and come back. So don't get too discouraged, but it happened the other night when I was doing the free tarot readings on Tuesday night. My internet went out for about half an hour, but I came back and did some more. And also, I should say that there is a chat box on Twitch, and so I should be able, if you talk to me, I should be able to see you if you're talking to me on Twitch. However, I'm not so sure about YouTube and Facebook. I don't even know if this is showing up on Facebook, and I couldn't understand how to set it up so that you can type at me. So if you want to type at me, you need to go to the Twitch channel. Now, another bit of housekeeping before I begin. I don't know why I'm screaming, because it's a horror show. Yeah, so another bit of housekeeping is that, oh, there goes my phone. I'll turn off the phone so I don't bother you. That's always a good plan, right? Don't interrupt my own reading. I do it all the time. So another bit of housekeeping, or whatever you want to call it, is that it is just me doing this. I'm handling all the technology. I'm doing the performance and everything. So if you do try to talk to me while I'm doing the reading, I won't be able to... Oh, someone's messaging me that you have to register on Twitch to chat. Yes, of course. That's one of the benefits of being on Twitch. But thank you, Nancy, for pointing that out. It's true. If you want to actually, and it's free to join, you just make the account like you do with everything else you're doing in life. And then you can click. And the other bit of housekeeping is that I am alone. So if you are trying to desperately speak to me once my nose is in the book, I probably won't see it till I'm done. But if other people want to help out in the chat, you can talk amongst yourselves. Oh, hi, Linda. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. So how I'm going to proceed is, first I'm going to read a poem that was published in 2000, and then I'm going to read the very first chapter of my very first mass market book, House of Pain. And I just want to show you, I'm not lying. It was published in 2001. So it is literally the 20th anniversary of House of Pain, my very first mass market novel. And August is when both my sons were born, so I think that's super auspicious. And the chapter I'm reading should be appropriate for everyone. I tried to pick something to read. I know most people know me as an erotica writer, so I tried to stay away from that for this particular reading. So I'm reading the first chapter. It's little kids doing stuff. And it's about probably 20-25 minutes to read that. And, oh, there's something else I was going to say, but I don't know. All right, so the first thing I'm going to read is, now way back, long before the internet was invented, or around the time internet was kind of invented, we had books like this. This is, you know, there was no Amazon Kindle. It was really cool to go to the United States and pick up some books like this. And I always wanted to be in what they call chapbooks. And so I actually made it into one of these chapbooks. I was Goddess of the Bay. And so I had a poem in this chapbook. And actually Nancy Kilpatrick, who's watching me tonight, is in this book. I think Linda might be too, as a matter of fact. Let's see. Lots of Charlie Jacob, Nancy Bennett, Trey Barker, Nancy Kilpatrick, so Greg Gaffoon. Yeah, that's all the hits. All the horror hits. So the first thing I'm going to read to you is my poem. See, it's, you know, I've read it before. Oh, thank you so much, Linda. Thank you. So here we go. My poem. Oh, and back then, for some reason... Oh, great. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you for telling me that. So back in the day, whenever I wrote poetry, I'd be can I do it? S.J. Girón? I don't know why. I was trying to have different identities. Now I totally have different identities because I just use whole different names. But back then I was S.J. Girón because I was trying to do the initial thing because women don't write horror. And that's the most important part of the night. It is Women in Horror Month. That's the thing I was trying to say. It's Women in Horror Month. The whole month of February is Women in Horror Month plus Black History Month. And, you know, and then you have your Black women horror writers, which... Linda Addison is one, and she's watching right now, so go check out her stuff. She's mostly a poet, and she does amazing things and has some films being made about her products and all this stuff. So it's a really exciting month for if you like horror. So you go on Twitter, go on all over the place. You'll see... You're very welcome. You'll see all kinds of lists and lists and lists of all the best horror writers who you should check out. And there's so many of us. It's insane. But there weren't so many in 2000. So here's my poem called Night Visitor. Oh, actually, I'm blocking I go through all the trouble of setting up these things. Okay, there we go. I want to make sure I'm not blocking, you know, the stuff we need to see. Okay, so I'm just gonna, give me 1 second to move my screen around here so I could see the chat and see everything else. Alrighty, here we go. Oh, don't want that up. And I hope everyone can hear me okay. If you can't hear me or if something's catching on fire behind me or something, just pop me a note in the chat. You know? All right. Night Visitor. She steps from shadows, white teeth gleaming, succulent lips plump as moonglow, delicate fingers reaching up towards soft flutter of tiny wings. How her heart beats with flush of memory. It was but moments ago when she touched sweet lips. Crimson passion. Stepping across the threshold, not daring to glance down at darkness below, where anguished cries from repentant lips echo. In her lover's gleaming eyes, she felt warm, sensed secrets of lives lived 1,000 times before. It was into those eyes she fell, firm arms holding her as she tasted nectar so fine, so ongoing, so ripe with scented dreams, her heart racing, crashing against her tiny chest in thrashing frenzy. Their moments were stolen staccato, interplayed with cautious listening, lest they be discovered by he with sharp tongue and sharper lance. In the folds of billowing curtains, they stroked soft curls of hair, drinking sweet perfume, watching the moonshine in darkened eyes, teeth gleaming as pearls in black velvet. Soft flesh beckoned. was spread with muffled gasping, penetrated, a ruby world glistening, hungrily tasted. Then soon, too soon, ebbing away. Now she stands in moonlight, soft flutter of tiny wings brush her ear, shy smile crossing her face, one hand reaching towards the sky, the other glancing her breast as she gives thanks to the darkness that brought her light, but for a moment. The angry bellow of her husband disturbs her reverie, and with a swish of silken thread, she turns to answer his loathsome call. White teeth glinting, savoring crimson passion. So that's one of the very few poems I've had published, and there you go. It was in Goddess of the Bay, which you can never get these anymore, I'm sure. But maybe on eBay you can find a copy. Okay, so I see the pretzel is still... Oh, thank you, Linda. Okay, I turned off the pretzel thing, so it's not going to annoy me with the pop-ups. Great, thank you so much. So that was my poem. Now on to House of Pain. Now I do want to mention a little bit about House of Pain before I begin my reading. I'm in Toronto, for those who don't know, and back in 2000, late 90s, there were a bunch of serial killings. Well, not serial killings, but a bunch of peeping toms, and there was school girls were being kidnapped and tortured, and they discovered that the culprit was Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka. And nowadays, most people who follow true crime know these names. But back when this was happening, back when I had the idea for the book, what was interesting was in Canada that the Bernardos had been discovered, the bodies had been found, and the house was bulldozed, which is what the catalyst of the first chapter of my book is about. It's about bulldozing an evil house. And but back in the day, I wrote the story first. Actually, this was a screenplay first, then I made it into a book. And but it's never been a movie. I wish it was. And so there was a lot of news blackout, because back then we didn't really have internet like we do now. And so all these court things were going on. We knew some terrible things had happened, but we didn't really know what. And then there was even a book put out about this, but the book was all blacked out. If you went to the bookstore, it was wrapped in saran wrap and all blacked out and stuff, and so it was really mysterious and crazy. And the crimes happened in St. Catharines, Ontario, which is a ways out of Toronto. So all these things really intrigued me as a horror writer. So I kind of took what I took was the idea of an evil house. The house being bulldozed was a really interesting image to me. I've actually seen where the Bernardo house was bulldozed. I've gone around. I've seen where the bodies were found and all that. I've kind of done that little trip long after I wrote the book. But anyway, so that's kind of a little bit of what inspired me. Or, I'm a horror writer. What do you want? Okay, so House of Pain, published by Leisure Books, Dorchester Publishing, back in the day. They don't exist anymore. All right. So this will probably be about 20 minutes or so. I think it's 25 to read. So I won't be able to see the chat because I'm going to read. But if, like I said, you come and go, do what you want. And the square is still green, so that tells me that's actually happening. So this is good. All right. Chapter 1. The sky hung heavy with clouds, darkness trembling into light, pregnant with seasons changing, a swirling vortex of shade and shadow, a collage of turbulence biding time. The woods glowed with orange-crimson slashes, leaves blanketing the paths, a playground of crunching, crackling death. Just beyond the woods, to one side, a river glistened in the sporadic sunlight, darkly hoarding the secrets beneath its glimmering veneer. 10-year-old Tony crouched behind a bush that had lost most of its leaves, making the game a little less challenging on this crisp October day. He was slight, a wiry child whose baggy jeans bagged lower than most, even with a belt tightly cinched around his waist. His monster blue t-shirt flapping when he walked. His dark blue eyes were doubly vibrant today under a shock of dark brown hair as he scanned the trees thoughtfully. Jeff, Tony's blonde-haired buddy, peeked out from a nearby tree. Tony grinned. Just a sec, I need a sip of water. Should have done this first. Sorry. That would have been smart. Come on, Tony whispered, waving his hand frantically. Jeff stared around to be certain the coast was clear, and then hightailed it over to the bush where Tony waited. Jeff slid into position beside Tony. Shh! Tony put his finger to his lips, laughing bubbling up through his body. The boys giggled breathlessly at their game, clamping muddy fingers over their mouths so they wouldn't give themselves away. This forest had been their playpen for the past few months of their 10-year-old lives. It was a small woods not far from their homes, a place of adventure, of spying, of forts and caves, a place to hide away from the rest of the world. Today, however, it appeared the rest of the world had descended onto their secret place. Tony and Jeff watched as people gathered around the small wood and brick house that stood on the edge of the woods. In fact, the woods were part of the property belonging to the owners of the house. The boys had never paid much attention to the house or the young couple that lived there. They had seen the couple from time to time, coming and going in their shiny red sports car. A blonde couple with nice clothes and few visitors. The boys weren't interested in how the couple conducted their existence, except in trying to stay out of sight of the house so that they wouldn't be caught trespassing. They weren't sure how tolerant the couple would be of three little boys playing spy games and going for the occasional swim. The boys' main interest was in the woods, the river, the caves, where they could thumb through comic books and gorge on candy, make weird little weapons and play with lighters and jackknives, and listen for the sounds in the shadows, especially when the sun was beginning to set. The time when their imaginations would really run wild. Sometimes they imagined they were stalking a fantastical creature, and their imaginations would steer into overdrive. Shadows stretched long and frightening, morphing into monsters they hunted with giggling trepidation. More than once, the shadows would seem almost too real, and then on those evenings they would give up the game and run home. Today they hadn't come to play in the woods. They were aware that the house had been in the news a lot lately. Aware that something horrific had happened here, and aware that things would be changing dramatically today. One by one, the cars rolled up the driveway, crunching on the gravel, spitting rocks from beneath their tires. People stood huddled around the house, whispering and crying, arguing and tisking their tongues in disbelief. A small procession dressed in black coats and hats slowly walked up the driveway, clutching Bibles to their chest and chanting the Lord's Prayer. "Check them out," Jeff nudged Tony. They watched as the black-garbed people formed a ring around the front door of the house. One of the men produced a flask from his pocket and poured the contents across the front step over the piles of flowers left in the past few weeks. He then put his fingers to the flask and drenched them. He slowly and carefully traced the image of the cross along the wooden front door, wetting his fingers frequently with the contents of the flask. Tony noticed that the steam wafted from the door where the man's fingers touched it. Perhaps it was from the heat of the morning sun, as sporadic as it was, for though the air was chilly, the sun still glowed with white-hot heat through the clouds. Another man stood by the door, waving a large golden cross, complete with golden-fleshed Jesus nailed to it. Even from the distance, Tony could make out Christ's rolling eyes and anguished open mouth. The men were chanting as they performed their rituals. "What are they saying?" Jeff asked. "I can't hear them. Let's get closer." The boys peered around, looking for the next safe barrier. There was a short hedge that bordered the side path where they could see the activity at the front door. Tony sucked in his breath and assumed racing position. He stretched his toes anxiously, waiting for people to look away. Would the flow of people ever stop? More people wandered along, joining their friends, placing flowers along the stairs so as not to disturb the religious groups. Tony waited until the black-clothed people were huddled in a semicircle, staring at the doorway as the curious onlookers watched and gossiped. Tony counted to 3 and then sprinted over to the hedge. He arrived safely unseen, then turned and signaled to Jeff, who followed. They crouched down again, this time the need for giggling dissipating as they witnessed the hollow-eyed grief of so many mourners. The boys could hear snatches of conversation. They will burn in hell. God damn them! My poor child. One of the black-clothed people, a man, started to sing softly. We shall overcome. One by one, the others followed, their voices growing stronger over the chaos slowly unraveling around them. What are they doing? Jeff asked. Praying, I guess. Tony shrugged. He was starting to piece together a vague notion of what was going on. Snatches of his parents' whispers, bits of info gleaned from the news, glaring headlines splashed across the papers over the past few months, all leading back to here. This house. A place of unspeakable evil. But it's not Sunday, Jeff said. Tony nodded slowly, trying to pull together all the pieces, his eyes dreamily watching the glitter of crucified Jesus catching in the sunlight. Oh, look, Jeff said. The boys' attention was drawn toward the loud roaring and clanging of a bulldozer creeping up the long gravel driveway. Smoke belched from its exhaust, a stinking black cloud that hung suspended in midair. The black-clothed people held hands, while policemen tied yellow tape around trees, creating a barrier away from the house. More people corralled the onlookers back behind the tape. The hand-holding procession was led by the man with the cross behind the line. A woman ducked under the tape and fled to the front of the house, carrying a large assortment of flowers. Tears streamed down her face as she fell onto the steps, sobbing, the flowers scattering and mingling with the others. My Belinda! She ran her hands along the stairs, caressing the worn wood. Her body shook with grief. One of the policemen knelt beside her, touching her arm. Sorry, ma'am, but you're gonna have to step back. The policewoman tightened her grip as if to lead the sobbing woman away. The woman jerked her arm away from the policewoman's grasp. No, Belinda's blood is here. Please, I know you're hurting. It will soon be over. You don't understand. They took her from me, my baby. There, Mrs. Greenstone. The male police officer approached the woman. He knelt down beside Mrs. Greenstone. Come along, Mrs. Greenstone. You know, nothing more can be done. The sooner we get rid of this house of horrors, the better everyone will sleep at night. Mrs. Greenstone looked at the young officers before her. She touched their faces. Oh, William, Sandra, I still can't believe she's gone. Mrs. Greenstone cried. She was so young, barely into her teens. We know, Mrs. Greenstone. William firmly held Mrs. Greenstone's arm and helped her to stand. There are so many of you. That's why we have to do this, Sandra said. But her blood is still there. Her last words, her last thoughts. Shh. Don't torture yourself. You know, she is at peace now. Mrs. Greenstone started to walk with the police officers, then stopped and stared back. But is she? Is she really at peace? Tears began to fall again as she took her place with the others behind the tape. The bulldozer belched forward, this time picking up speed as it approached the house. Without stopping, it rammed right into the front stairs. The crowd of people cheered as wood splintered. The bulldozer backed up and barreled forward again, making further headway into the porch. Connie Bellows, the local news reporter, dragged her cameraman Bob over to where the bulldozer was backing up, readying itself for another go at the house. "Ready, Bob?" she asked, positioning herself where Bob could get the bulldozer wreaking havoc. Connie tugged at her miniskirt. "Rolling," Bob said. This was the scene of so much horror. Where am I? This was the scene of so much horror, so much death and torture. Look at all the lives that have been touched by this destruction. With Donald and Debbie Johnson safely behind bars, awaiting execution, there is hope that peace will once again be restored to this little town with the demolition of this house of pain. Connie leered and Bob put down the camera. "Was that all right?" she asked, touching her short red hair. Bob nodded as he checked the bite through the viewfinder. "Looks good," he said. "All right, let's get some more shots of these religious wackos." Connie and Bob walked near the hedge where Tony and Jeff hid. "She's so pretty," Tony said, staring at Connie's shapely calves. Jeff shook his head. "She's a bitch." "Maybe, but she's still so pretty." "Get over it." The cheers and crying were nearly drowned by the grinding of the bulldozer. The house shook with every ramming slam. The sound of screeching and groaning echoed through the woods. The house leaned back and forth as if trying to dodge the next battering, moaning as foundation posts were weakening. There was a rustling behind Tony and Jeff. They turned to see what was making the noise and found themselves face to face with their friend Buddy. "Hey, you guys, got a great seat for this show." Buddy grinned with teeth too large and gapped for his mouth. He had red hair that fell into an unwashed tangle to his shoulders and more freckles than stars in the universe. His eyes were a weird color of reddish brown. They almost seemed to match his hair on some days. "Where have you been?" Jeff asked. "You missed most of it." "Nah, I was over on the other side." "Hey, caught me a frog. Want to see?" As Buddy reached into his jeans, Tony looked back over to the house. The roof was sagging. Buddy pulled a tiny toad from his pocket. He patted its head, giving it a little kiss. "Hey, little dude, you want to watch the show too?" Buddy held the toad up between his two fingers, lightly enough so as not to kill it, but firmly enough so that the toad squirmed, kicking its hind legs. "Cool," Jeff said, glancing at the toad and then back to the house. Tony looked at the toad, but his attention was also drawn back to the wrecking of the house. "Holy shit," Tony said. The bulldozer was backing up again as the house teetered. The walls fell in on themselves, dirt and dust, wood and stone, flinging into the air as if a bomb had detonated. The house shrieked and groaned as it sank into itself. A thick gray cloud puffed into the air. The onlookers coughed and choked and clapped. The cloud hung over the house, enveloping it from sight for a moment like a heavy blanket. Tony stared at it, his eyes burning from all the dust and dirt. The cloud seemed to swell and pulse, rippling in thick, heavy, undulating waves. Tony's body trembled as though a shard of electricity had wormed its way into his body and was dancing through his veins. His blood was on fire, surging through him with a boiling roar, his mind flooding with blackness ringed with a sense of bad things. Images flashed through his mind. He could see a basement, a dark, dingy stone dungeon where thick silver chains attached to heavy metal rings were cemented into the floor, where unknown bodies lay broken and bleeding. He saw shiny instruments, sharp and pointed. He saw leather straps and canes. He saw knives and ropes and candles and burning jars of something, smelled a sweet smoke, felt angst and confusion fleeting towards him. Thoughts that weren't his own yet, he felt them just the same. The walls seemed to breathe, stone walls that pulsed like a heartbeat. He watched as they thumped, each pulse pressing the stone forward like rubber, then sinking back into itself again, pushing further, stretching, splitting, until tiny cracks snaked along and burst open, leaking streams of dark, thick, granite-colored liquid. All the while there was a hideous shrieking, squawking noise, like a giant machine clanging and grinding rusty gears. Tony put his hands over his face, pressing on his eyeballs, willing the vision to be gone. He prayed for blackness, for darkness. When he opened his eyes again, he was looking at the ruined house. The cloud had dissipated, smoke into the air, as fine and distant as any other cloud of dust. Tony gasped and looked at his friends. He couldn't tell if they experienced the same feelings, the same vision. Then he saw the toad in Buddy's hand as Buddy watched the cloud float away. The toad hung limply, its little eyes bulging, blood bubbles leaking from its tiny mouth. Tony sucked in a couple of breaths of air and turned his attention back to the demolition. Within minutes, the house was nothing but junk. Several people started to move forward, but the policeman held them at bay. "Everyone, stay back. It isn't safe." A tall, lanky teenager crept around the human barricade and snatched a brick from the rubble. William spotted him. "Hey you, no souvenirs. If you take one, then everyone will want one. This is still private property." With two officers flanking him, the teenager reluctantly dropped the brick. "Shit, man, that would have been so cool." He returned to his buddies, who slapped him on the back. "Nice try," they said, scowling over at the cops. The boys watched as the choir launched into another hymn. Connie was still wandering around, prattling on about her insights to the camera, shoving her microphone into the face of whoever passed by. Mrs. Greenstone sat on the grass, clutching a red carnation, twirling it in her fingers, back and forth, her eyes glassy as she watched the smoke cloud rise above the trees. "She's still there," she muttered to no one in particular. "They're all still there." "All right, everybody, let's go. Show's over. Clear up now." The police waved their hands and tried to shepherd the audience back down the driveway. "I want one of those bricks," Jeff said, his dark brown eyes glinting. "Yeah, that would be cool," Tony said. "How are we going to get past the cops?" Buddy asked, making his toad fly with little airplane noises. He stopped and looked at the toad. "Oh man, he's dead." "Shit, you killed another one, Buddy. Jeez, when you gonna be more careful?" Jeff scolded. "God," Tony sighed, pretending to notice for the first time. "You squeezed him to death." "Man, I just wanted to play with him." Buddy's eyes filled with tears as he laid the toad gently in his palm. He dabbed at the bubbles of blood around its mouth. "I was trying to be so careful this time." "Well, you did it again," Jeff scoffed. "Just get rid of it." "Maybe I should bury him." Buddy started to dig at the loose leaves where they crouched. "Shh! Don't make so much noise," Jeff warned as Buddy scooped out damp, bug-ridden dirt. "I didn't mean to kill him. I didn't." Buddy sobbed, tears streaming down his face. "Stop it. Who cares? It's just a fucking frog," Jeff snapped. "Just a frog." Buddy stopped digging and stared at Jeff. His red-brown eyes, normally small and narrow, were now wide open. "Just a frog." "Yeah, it's just a fucking frog." "I suppose you are just a person. Just one fucking person out of a million. But boy, would you be pissed if someone came along and squeezed you to death," Buddy said. "Shh," Tony hissed. "Come on, guys, cut it out." Jeff shook his head and crept back over to where Tony was watching the activity. Buddy continued his burial. They watched as the cops hurried, They watched as the cops hurried people down the driveway and cars roared into life and began crunching back down the gravel. Look, they're so busy getting everyone out, they won't notice if we plan a sneak attack. Over behind that way, Tony said, pointing a pathway from bush to bush where a pile of bricks had fallen. I just was remembering I need to do the screensaver thing. Okay. 2 officers stood guard by the ruins, pacing back and forth while the rest helped the crowds out. The black-clothed people were walking slowly down the driveway, their singing barely audible over the noise of cars and chattering. So, who's gonna go? Jeff smiled. Who's the fastest? Buddy patted the earth where the toad lay buried and scooped a few leaves over the spot. He grinned, his drying tears leaving dirt-smeared trails along his face. We all know Tony's the fastest. Tony shook his head. No, I'm not. Sometimes I beat you, Jeff agreed. So, who's gonna go? Buddy asked. What if we get caught? Tony said. Maybe we should sweeten the pot, Jeff said. Whoever goes gets $5 from each of us. That's $10 for the person who steals 3 bricks. Tony thought about all the things he could buy with $10. He studied the cops and how relaxed they were becoming now that almost everyone was gone. Everyone except Connie Bellows, still dragging around her cameraman. She was trying to get closer to the house, seemed to be trying to see down one of the holes exposing the basement. The police officers noticed at the same time Tony did and walked over to her. Tony didn't need to think twice. He raised himself into squatting mode and counted to 3. While the cops were talking to Connie, he broke into a run, then dived behind a small pile of rubble. He crawled on his belly, dragging himself with his hands towards a small clump of bricks. He grabbed 3 bricks that appeared intact. He shoved 2 of them into the side pockets of his baggy pants. The third one he held in his hands. He was just getting ready to go back to the hedge when he heard the cops shouting at him. His heart sank. Busted! He saw Jeff and Buddy creep away. Jeff gave them their secret hand signal before he slinked into the woods. Tony nodded slightly, giving his secret hand signal replay by tapping the brick. Hey, you get back here, one of the cops called out. Tony scrambled to his feet. He saw the cops on the other side of the gaping hole to the basement. Put down those bricks! Tony watched them stumble across the debris. He was torn. He knew he should obey the law, but he also really wanted to keep those bricks. He wanted the brick, and he wanted $10. He broke into a run. The cop finally made their way across the rubble and picked up speed as they followed the boy into the woods. Tony had the advantage in that he knew the woods by heart. But he was severely handicapped by the lack of leaves on the trees and the noisy crunching of the dead ones under his feet. He zigzagged his way across the bigger trees, stopping now and again to catch his breath, still hearing some of the cops panting in pursuit. Hey, kid, put it back. Don't make me come after you. Tony laughed. He already was coming after him, wasn't he? He ran down by the river's edge where the marsh grass was still high. His sneakers sloshed and slipped into the mud, sinking up to his ankles, the suction so great that he thought he'd lose his shoes, but it was still quieter than the leaves crunching into the woods. He heard the cop sliding down to the edge. Jesus Christ, I'm not going into that shit, the cop muttered. Hey, kid, you got your bloody souvenir? And mark my word... Oh, I'll go back. Hey, kid, you got your bloody souvenir. And mark my words, nothing but bad luck will come your way if you keep it. The cop half smiled to himself as he picked his way back out of the swamp grass and made his way back into the woods. Tony stared at the brick in his hand. He was home free. The 3 boys sat in their cave fort, examining the bricks by the light of the several flickering candles. Wow, those are so cool, Buddy said, turning one over in his hands. Bricks from the House of Horrors. We're the only ones, Tony grinned. Oh, I'm sure others will steal things too. They can't guard that place forever, Jeff said. Well, we had the first ones, Tony smiled. So pay up, guys. I want my $10. Jeff and Buddy stood up and felt in their pockets. Jeff pulled out 2 crumpled $1 bills. He held them out to Tony. Here. Only have 2 for now, but I'll have more later. Tony snatched them. You better, or I'm taking it back. He unrolled the money and looked at it, holding it up to the candlelight to make sure he wasn't getting ripped off. And you, Buddy? Buddy pulled some change out of his pocket, a mixture of pennies, some nickels, and a couple of quarters. He dropped them into Tony's outstretched hand. I'll get you the rest as soon as I can. Tony sighed and counted it, shaking his head. It's even less than Jeff had. Geez. You know, I don't get much allowance. Tony looked at Buddy and nodded. Even though they were just kids, they already understood about Buddy and his hard life with an alcoholic mom on welfare and a succession of new daddies. I know, Buddy. It'll be months before you pay me back. Maybe I should hang on to that brick just to make sure you do. Buddy's eyes grew wide. You don't have to do that. I'm good for it. I really am. Well, we're gonna thump you if you don't come through, Jeff said, raising his fist. Well, what about you? I don't see you paying up in full either. Well, I could have if I'd known. Besides, Tony knows I'd never steer him wrong. Hey, Tony went... Hey, he knows I'll never steer him wrong either, Buddy pouted. I just don't have rich folks like you guys have. Tony winced. Buddy's words hit home. Sure, they weren't rich, but middle class seemed rich to people like Buddy. Tony stood up, holding the 3 bricks. Hey, guys, we're best friends to the end. He held a brick out to each of them. Cool, Buddy said, turning his over in his hand. Thanks, man. A toast, Jeff said, imitating his parents at the dinner table with their wine glasses, and held his brick up. The boys held their bricks up over their heads and touched them together. Best friends forever, Jeff shouted. Best friends, said Tony. Best friends, said Buddy, smiling. The bricks sparked, sending a surge of electricity down their arms. The boys jumped back, the bricks falling from their hands. The bricks landed with 3 successive thumps onto the dirt floor of the cave, smoke wafting from them in the candlelight. Holy shit, Jeff said, staring in disbelief as he rubbed his palm against his leg. What was that? Tony asked, also rubbing his hands to get rid of the tingling surge. It felt like when I stuck my knife in the electric socket once, Buddy replied, inspecting his hand. Like a big jolt of electricity. That was weird, Tony said. He crouched by his brick and poked at it with a stick. There was nothing. Cautiously, he picked up his brick. He turned it over in his hand. There was no feeling in it now, nothing unusual at all. Hey, guys, it's okay now, he said. The other 2 watched warily as Tony touched all 3 bricks. I gotta go home now, Jeff said, carefully picking up his brick. He inspected it and found it to be just a plain old brick again. He shoved it in the waist of his pants, of his jeans. See you guys later. Yeah, I gotta get going too, Tony nodded, rubbing his eyes. The musky cave of candle smoke was getting to him. Jeff stumbled out of the cave. Tony and Buddy stared at each other wordlessly. Tony turned his brick over and over in his hand. It was real, wasn't it? Tony asked. We couldn't have all had the same dream. Vision, Buddy smiled, his face suddenly looking old and wise in the shadows of the cave. We had a vision. Tony was filled again with a sense of dread and wanted to put the brick down. But he also knew this was a very valuable souvenir, and it might even be worth money to someone somewhere someday. Besides, he didn't want Buddy to think he was a wuss. See you later, Buddy, Tony said. Buddy nodded. Yeah. And don't forget the money. $25 a week, man. I mean it. Yeah, thanks. I won't let you down, promise. Tony shrugged, wondering if he'd ever see money from either one of the boys. He walked out of the cave and into the late afternoon sun. The days were so short now. The long, languorous days of summer had flown by, and now darkness came so early and stayed so late. A wind had picked up, blowing in a chill from the lake. Tony held the brick in his hand as he wandered along the edge of the lake. His lips were pursed in a whistle as he strolled along, trying to focus on the song he was creating instead of the weird and wild thoughts running through his mind. It had been a full and strange day, a day he didn't think he would ever forget. As he walked along, he grew more aware that his hand was throbbing. Actually, he realized it was burning. He looked down and saw that the brick was pulsing. The sides pushed out and then collapsed in again as easily as a rubber balloon. The brick was breathing. Tony stopped and stared down at it. The brick expanded and collapsed, each expansion pushing out further. He saw little cracks tearing along the sides, saw droplets of moisture leaking out. He held the brick closer to his face, trying to see what was making it do that. Must be a trick. Must be a trick of some sort. Maybe Buddy or Jeff, playing some kind of practical joke, had switched the brick on him. Maybe the whole business with the sparks had been some kind of setup too. He wouldn't put it past them. The brick breathed again, stretching so far that it was almost translucent. The sides heaved so far that he thought it was gonna burst. One of the cracks split open further, and a wash of thick red liquid leaked out. Tony gawked at it as the wash turns into a river gushing over his hand. As he stared speechlessly at the bleeding brick, it burst into a fountain, spraying him from head to toe with thick, syrupy liquid. Tony screamed. So that's chapter 1 of my very first book, House of Pain. I hope you enjoyed reading me reading that. I know it wasn't perfect, but hey, it's live reading, right? And nothing caught on fire, I don't think. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching me read that. And if anyone has questions, now I think I'm pretty sure I cannot see Facebook comments, and I think it is showing up on Facebook, so I'm going to see if I can see it on my phone. But if you're on Twitch, you can definitely ask me things, and I believe if you're on YouTube, you can ask me stuff as well. I'm just not being rude. I just want to quickly check. I don't even know how to check, to be honest. This is all new and exciting. Okay, Nancy says it's on Facebook. But because I'll see if I could see it. Mine says there's no internet connection, so maybe no, Nancy just messaged me, so she says, so I'm online. My box is green. Anyway, so if you're on Facebook watching this, I'm very sorry I can't talk to you right now. You have to come to Twitch and type and have an account to type. But anyways, and if you're on YouTube, give it a shot. It should come through on YouTube. I have no idea. Never done this before. Okay, Nancy says I'm still on YouTube live, but who knows how we talk on there. Anyways, yeah, so that was me reading House of Pain, originally published by Leisure Books, but it has now seen a new life, as all horror does. You know, when you die in horror, you're never really dead, right? Sound like Star Wars too, really. And so it has been reprinted. Well, it's not, I don't believe it's in print, but it is in ebook form from Crossroads Books. So you can definitely grab an ebook copy from them to celebrate Women in Horror Month. And I did 4 books with Leisure Books back in the 2000s. House of Pain was my first one. Then I had Borrowed Flesh. I have it in a bag, so it's my only copy. Borrowed Flesh was one of my books with leisure. I also wrote 2 other books, one called The Birds and the Bees and one called Mistress of the Dark. They're all available from Crossroad Books. And then my very first published novel that wasn't mass market, called Eternal Sunset. Crossroads Books also sells that, and that also comes as a print book too. But if you want a print book of House of Pain, email Crossroads Books. Oh, that's a mouthful. Try saying it yourself. You can laugh at me saying it, but you say it. You say it. Crossroads Books. You can bug them. Just say, hey, we want print versions of House of Pain, and maybe they'll put it into print if enough people clamor for it. I think that's how it works. And then that's part of my career. Then another part of my career is I'm doing a series called Witch Upon a Star, which comes out from it's published by Riverdale Avenue Books. Oh, it's hard to talk after reading for an hour. Hang on. So, sorry, I'm just going to look at my dashboard for a minute. All right. Sorry, I've never done this before, streaming to 3 places. So I was curious to see what it looked like while I was swallowing. So I have a series called Witch Upon a Star, and it's more erotic horror, and it's about witches. It's a coven of witches, and each book features a different witch, but all the witches hang out, and you can pick up any of the books and read it. You don't have to read them in order. You don't have to know one book to do the other books, but if you do read them all, there is a connecting story, but it's pretty obvious if you know, you're just reading one book, you're not going to be like, holy shit, what's happening? It's like, nah, you'll get a full story. And I call them horror light, though they are a little bit grisly, but they're not as extreme as what I'm really known for. But yeah, they do have extreme moments. So my latest Witch Upon a Star book is called Taurus, oh my god, Taurus, a hearse of a different, Taurus the bull, a hearse of a different color, and it's about a crystal ball reader named Dorothy. Who's from Oz. No, she's not from Oz, but she could be. I was inspired with the witch, and the cover of the book looks like the Death Star, you know. It's a crystal ball, but it's cool that the artist, Scott Carpenter, who made the cover, I love how he made it look like a Death Star. And I don't know if he realizes it does, but I'm a super Star Wars nerd. You know, usually have the Star Wars crap behind me, so I think it's cool, but it's nothing to do with Star Wars or science. It's a witch story, romantic witch, and it's about, so the Taurus book is about a crystal ball reader who's one of the witches of the coven, and the idea is each book is about that particular witch trying to have a romance. So this one witch, she has a huge crush on one of the actors of a horror anthology series that she really loves, and so she gets really excited when that series comes to town to shoot some stuff, because it's a creepy little town all these witches live in. And oh yeah, Linda, I know you like Star Wars too. Yeah, horror in Star Wars. Well, you know, we got the Kylo Ren. Oh, I got one right here. Of course, I have a Kylo Ren. You know, like, is that not a witch? Like, is that not like a, you know, he's got the black cape, the hood, the, you know, come on. Well, why wouldn't we love Star Wars if we're horror writers? You know, and they're pretty horrific. Like Darth Vader's like a, you know, he was like burned to death, and yeah, they're all witches. They use the Force, you know, they got their space lasers, you know. Oh, I think there's a huge crossover there, and some people believe it, some don't, but Linda and I get it though. So yeah, so anyways, yeah, so I have the Witch Upon a Star series. So yeah, so the latest book came out about a year ago. So there's 5 books out now in that series. So if y'all go out and buy some, then I'll write some more, because I got a whole Zodiac to go through. We've got it was originally, the Sagittarius book was originally published about 10 years ago, but now we've taken that off the market, and I'm going to rewrite that particular one. So now the series starts with Capricorn. So we have Capricorn Cursed, then we have Aquarius Haunted Heart, Haunted Heart, who's about a ghost hunter. Oh, Cursed is about a vampire. The witch is a vampire. Then we have the witch in the Aquarius witch is a ghost hunter. Then we have the Pisces witch, who's an aura reader, and she paints, and she has a nice sexy romance with her young student protege in her art class. Then we have Aries, who's a palm reader, and she's a swinger, and we got some Frankenstein stuff going on in that book. And then that brings us to Taurus, which is where we're at now. The crystal ball reader with a crush on the movie star. So that's what that's all about. And then one more thing before I leave. It's been about an hour. But again, if anyone has anything to say now that I'm not reading, please feel free to talk. The latest book I'm in is the Pulp book of Phobias #2. I'm also in the Pulp horror book. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go soon because I can't talk anymore. The Pulp horror book of Phobias. I'm in 1 and 2, and my story in the first one is about magicians, and it's about this. They put a curse on this private investigator, and so these are phobia books. So in the first book, I was assigned my phobia that I was assigned for the first book was the number 5. I'm like, what the hell? We got 5 fingers. There's a Dion quintuplets. I was trying to rack my brain for so long to think about 5. And then so anyways, I figured it out. So you can go grab that anthology. Lots of women writers in there because it's the Women in Horror Month. Hi Cecile. How you doing? Thank you for coming out. And thank you. So and then in the Pulp book of Phobias 2, this all takes place inside a house. And so there's only 13. The first Pulp book of the Pulp horror book of Phobias, the first one, is huge. It's like well, we don't have phone books anymore, but it's bigger than a phone book. This one is smaller. There's 13 authors. Some of us are in the first and second book. But what's really cool about who's in this book is Stephen King's in this book. So I finally got my dream of being between the covers with Stephen King. And that was exciting for me. And my book is the last one in the book. And interestingly, I wrote it around this time last year. Just when we were first starting to learn about this strange pandemic coming to town, and it was kind of here but not, and we're all confused. And so it's my only pandemic story because I'm not going to deal with the pandemic anymore. But back then I didn't know there was really going to be a pandemic. It was just sort of like, it reminded me, back then, because those of us who live in Toronto, we went through SARS about 10 years ago, the SARS scare. So we learned all about how to sanitize. There's disinfectant all over the place, and all the malls and schools and such. So we all so I figured, yeah, we'll nip this corona thing in the bud. It's not going to be long because Toronto knows how to battle diseases, and we'll get that sucker smacked down by April. Oh, was I wrong? But yeah, so anyways, but my story in here, my phobia is doorknobs. And it was fun to write. I love writing, so that's why I write. So, yeah, anyways, I'm trying to think. So I really want to thank all of you for coming out. Yeah, and birds. Yeah, my book, The Birds and the Bees, which came out from Leisure. I don't have a copy. The Birds and the Bees came out because I'm actually not afraid of bees, but I'm afraid of birds. So I wrote that book because I'm afraid of them. And since then I've come to realize that birds are just miniature dinosaurs, and I love dinosaurs. So I didn't know if maybe I was a caveman with even though I know humans didn't exist, with dinosaurs and all that stuff. Just the ancient reptilian brain. It's a bird, it's a dinosaur, it's on my finger. Like, how can I be scared? But it'll peck your eyes out. But anyways, I do want to thank all of you, and I want to thank the Canada Council for the Arts, and the Writers Union of Canada, and the National Reading Program. So this event that I did right now, which is a little bit different than, well, I've never done this on Twitch ever, or anywhere. This is my first whatever, whatever it is I'm doing. I'm wheeling around in my chair is what I'm doing. I want you to see my decorations. Although I guess since I had my camera on before I thought I did, you probably saw them all anyways, and I hope you didn't see me running around naked. Now I don't know what to think. I'm afraid to look back at the recording. Anyways, yeah, so I'm super grateful to the National Reading Program and the Canada Council for the Arts and the Writers Union of Canada. They made this evening possible. They sponsored it, and it's been so amazing that it gave me the impetus to do this. And we'll see. I'm hoping to do this for May Day because the Taurus book does have things with a maypole in it. And I was thinking, oh, thank you so much, Cecile. So it has a maypole in it, so I'm hoping to do a reading sponsored by the Arts Council again on May. But even if they don't sponsor me, I think I'll do it anyways as celebration for May 1st. And as all of you know, or anyone who follows me on Twitch, that I do tarot readings on Tuesdays. I do them for free. All you have to do is come in. You see how a couple people are talking, or maybe I'm not sure what you guys see at all anymore. And I can't see Facebook at all. It won't even let me look at Facebook while I'm on this for some reason. So I'm sorry I'm not answering anybody on Facebook if you're all trying to talk to me. Well, you all, like 2 people, I'm sure. I have no illusions about technology and how much we do not want to stare at the screen. But yeah, I'm excited. So getting the grant to do this reading really kicked me into gear to figure out how to stream not only to Twitch, which I do every Tuesday. Oh yeah, start talking. I'm so like scattered. So I have the Tarot Tuesdays. So I do tarot readings on Tuesday. I used to do them every day. Then I didn't do them for about 1.5 years because I had technology issues. I am so happy the technology gods have been with me tonight, as far as I know. And so come by Tuesdays. On Twitch, I do have a schedule and I try to make sure it's updated, but it's usually 7 o'clock. I've kind of come to put my tarot readings at 7, but it's not necessarily. And all it is someone will say hello in the chat, like you see a couple of people have been doing, and you just say hello. You don't have to ask me a question. You don't have to tell me anything, and I just pull a card and say some stuff, and that's what it is. We don't get really in depth because it's a public forum and all that, but it's a little taste of, you know, just for fun. What's your message of the day? What's your message of the week, kind of thing. So Tuesdays I do that, and then other things I do on my Twitch channel vary. I was playing violin, I'm doing a reading, I'm play games. You know, this is a gaming channel, so I do that a little bit. I'm not a gamer. I learned in the pandemic how to be a gamer, so that's one of the things the pandemic has taught me. Anyways, so if anyone's asking me questions on Facebook or YouTube, I don't have a clue. All I see is Twitch people. And so I just want to go back just to see what this dashboard looks like while I'm live. Oh, that's so cool. You guys don't know what I'm talking about, but I do. Anyways, I really appreciate everyone who's come out. And I hope to see you all again very soon. And yeah, so everyone have a fantastic evening. Thank you so much for coming out and watching me read House of Pain. I haven't read from House of Pain in 20 years, so that was cool. Oh, I'm glad you had fun, Cecile. Yeah, so House of Pain came out in 2001. This is the 20th anniversary special, as well as being Women in Horror Month, Black History Month. So go out and read a lot of Black horror writer women. Just do the all-in-one and read. And you know, women are scary. That you know, the mother of horror is Mary Shelley with Frankenstein, and you know, women can be quite scary. Yeah, I know it's been 20 years. I couldn't believe it till someone else posted it, and I went, hang on, my first book came out the same year as him, Tim Wagner, and it made me go and look at the opening of my book. I went, oh man, it's been 2001. Who knew? I know, crazy times. All right, but thank you all so much for coming by, and hopefully I'll figure out how to turn this off and it'll all go off. You know, I don't know. We'll see. It's an adventure. Thank you all so much. Thank you, and have a fantastic night. Thank you.